have you ever heard of being invisible to yourself? Well, that's what I want to discuss for a little while. For the first half of my life, I was invisible to my own self. And that can easily be misconstrued as self-hatred. And in my case, it was far from that, but I didn't realize that until later in life, that you can even be invisible to your own self. And how that works is what I'm going to discuss. I was trying to figure out, where am I going with this? And then I had to think, and then I remembered that the first half of my life, I was invisible to myself. And where am I going with it? I'm probably going to try to explain to people who are watching and to myself how that looks. Because I know now that before anybody can move forward in their life, you got to know who you are. You got to have a concept of yourself. You got to have a sense of self in some way. You got to know your shadows, which is the part of you that needs improvement. And you got to know your strengths and the part of you that's strong and the part of you that's very human. These things that when you're invisible, you don't see one way or the other. And you cannot move forward if you can't see yourself. I'd like to add that I'm no specialist or claim to be an expert on any of this. I'm only sharing, that's all. Somebody just may need to hear this. I grew up with fond memories of my family, my friends, school, all of my growing up life until my adulthood. It's really nothing but fond memories. But all those years, everyone else saw me. Everyone else could see me. My family, they could see me. My friends could see me. My classmates, my coworkers, everybody saw me, but I didn't see me. And what I mean is the issues that I had, the quality about myself, all the things that makes a person human, that makes me, makes you. I couldn't see none of that in me. I didn't look at myself. My entire life growing up was always centered around throwing my light off on other people. They're not even asking for it. I just wanted to share it. Not consciously. I just wanted to give it away. And everybody I came across, whether it was family, whether it was friends, co-workers, I was throwing the light that I realized that's in me now. I was just throwing it out there for everybody. I was the biggest fan of humanity growing up. I saw no wrong in people. As a result, when people were around me, they didn't even see the wrong in themselves. And I look back and I think of so many times I could have been in some very funky situations with people, but only because of my own naivete and being a big fan of humanity. I never got to see those sides of these people. But I digress. So, now, what do I mean when I say I was a fan of humanity? What I mean by fan is all of my cousins, I rooted them. I saw all of my cousins as shit don't stink. All of them. They were the best cousins, and all of my aunts and uncles could do no wrong. My friends, I felt honored to be their friends, I thought so much of them. Okay? I always was a fan of everybody that I came in contact with. And I threw my enthusiasm, my light in their direction, always encouraging, always seeing nothing but the great in them that they probably don't even see in them. They probably didn't even see in themselves. That's the kind of kid I was, and that's the kind of young adult that I was. Just constantly uplifting and rooting for everybody in my life. To me, everybody that was in my life was royalty. Okay? And I was honored to be part of their presence. Now, that being said, I didn't look down on myself in the process. Remember, I can't see myself. So I don't look down on myself or up on myself. You can't see it. If I can't see it, I can't have any relationship with it. And that's what it was. I didn't really have a relationship with Leonard Dean at that time. I only had a relationship with my naivete and my love for humanity. That was my relationship. And I don't want to forget my immediate family, my siblings, and my mother. My brother and sister, I saw them as if, not consciously, but I felt as though they were my children. I wanted the best for my sister and my brother. It wasn't until I started to become later in life, later in my 20s, when I realized people are who they are, and I need to get my vision of what I think they are out of my head and start to see people for who they are. But before that space, before I was in that space, I wanted nothing but quality and the best for my sister and brother and my mother. I used to fantasize about the things I wanted to do for my mama when I got some money, like most kids do. I was no different. I wanted to do for my mama so bad when I was young. I wanted to be the one to buy her the house that she deserved. I wanted to be the one to do the things that she never could do because she was raising us. And I wanted those same things and values for my sister and brother. I didn't want to leave them out because my immediate family I was a little bit distant from them later in life, but they were just as valuable to me as the rest of my extended family and friends. So while I am being a cheerleader for the world, being a cheerleader for my personal space and my inner connection with the people in my life, I'm losing myself, okay? And I'm becoming more and more and more invisible. So now I'm a young adult, and being invisible to myself no longer serves a purpose specifically as a young man growing into young adulthood. It's time for me to see, okay? So now here I am, a young adult, and I've given away all of my light that I should have been using for myself. And so I'm stagnant, and I don't know why. I have big dreams, I have ideas, I see a future, but it's not moving. So now I'm stagnant. And the reason is because I've always put everybody else in the foreground of my life. Not looking down on myself again, not looking back on myself, but not even realizing that I am here. And some of my enthusiasm, some of my light, I needed to hold on to so I can grow, so I can free myself from bondage and become the adult, the young man, and move into the world that I saw myself in that I wasn't moving in. That's because all of my momentum was outward with everybody else. I was the biggest fan. You know, when one of my best friends got the internship and was making, I don't know how much it was back then. I think it was $30,000, and that's a lot of money for 1986 or whatever. I was right there, and I talked about her. I spread the gossip. I had a cousin who was a volunteer fireman. I talked to him. I talked about him as though he was, the fireman for the White House. I was so proud of him, and that's how I am. I'm very proud, and I talk highly about the people in my life. And I totally didn't see that I needed some of that for myself. I needed some of that light to shine on me, my own light. So I'm an adult now, and I don't understand this concept that I'm talking to you guys about now. I don't understand this. I just know I'm not moving. I'm stuck, yada yada. And then the spiritual awakening came. After that spiritual awakening, which, by the way, is in my book, Becoming Kylo, I talk very candidly about that situation and that experience. But after that experience is when I started to see glimpses of who I was. I started to not see everybody else in this naive for me, but actually it was a very real light. It was the human side of people that I saw, but naive for me to not realize there's a shadow side in everybody also. I only saw that humanity, that angel side in folks, and I totally disregarded the shadow side. So I have this profound spiritual experience that caused me to start to see glimpses of Leonard Dean, the man. I was around 30 at the time of this. And that's when I first started to see myself. And I started to see my shadows. I started to see the quality in myself. Things that I had never seen before in myself and in other people started to suddenly come over me, starting to suddenly be part of how I view my life. And that was very different. It's a very, very windy day, so I hope the wind is not being too much of a distraction. But so where was I? All of that awakening period of seeing myself and others now, you can read about it in Becoming Kylo. I'm going to fast forward. So now that the world and people are being brought into balance, balance is what we're trying to achieve now. Not seeing myself, or for a person not to see themselves, in my opinion, is just as much of an imbalance as a person who is only a big fan of themselves and they don't see their outside world around them. Opposite of what I was. But it doesn't matter. Both ends are imbalanced. It's just that society tend to have more patience and tolerance for the one who sees the world as the cheerleader and invisible to themselves versus the person who sees themselves and they're a big fan of themselves and they don't notice and they don't see the rest of the humanity and the rest of the world. But either way, it's an extreme imbalance. So one imbalance is no better than the other. So just like any imbalance, I and the world and individuals have to learn to bring ourselves, I had to learn to bring myself back into balance. And that just meant I had to start cheering myself. I had to start becoming my own fan. I had to become my biggest fan. That doesn't mean I was going to say it doesn't mean that I stopped being a fan of the world. Honestly, I don't think I can. I am just a big fan of humanity, and I think that's just who I am. My calling requires for me to be like that. So, but now I have to become balanced. So I'm starting to see the quality in myself, the things I didn't see before because I couldn't see me. I'm seeing the shadows, the things that need improving. Never saw those things because I didn't see them. Sorry about the wind, guys. I know how it sounds because I've listened to it when I'm editing. It sounds terrible, but it's windy outside today. So I'm having to learn how to think about Kylo. I've had to learn how to appreciate all the greatness that I have in me. I've had to learn to focus on that greatness and focus on me. I still can't help but to cheer on my family. I still can't help but to cheer on the rest of the world and humanity. I mean, a lot of my Q&As are all about that. So that's not going to go away, but it's becoming balanced now. I'm not all about the rest of the world and the other people. I'm about Kylo now. In addition, I should say, not now, but in addition. And I'm seeing my shadows, the things that I need to improve, things I would have never seen before this awakening. So sometimes as we awaken, we may have to start doing some things that are extreme or different from the way we've always done things or view things from a different perspective. And others may not understand that. The point being is we all have to mature as a species. We got to learn to allow the individual to grow. We have to allow to let our children, our friends, our parents, our aunts and uncles, everybody in our life, and people that are even strangers, that loud mouth on the train, don't judge him, ignore him. That's what I say. Ignore him. You know, he may have to go to an extreme in order to start to express himself. And sometimes the extreme doesn't look pretty and it looks odd. But if we were mature human beings, if we had more understanding of this concept, we can look the other way easier. It's so hard for people, especially Americans, I think, to just look the other way. Now, that is if it's not interfering with your own space. I'm a fan of guarding your space. So I'm not saying don't guard your space. I'm saying if there's something you don't understand in a person or a situation, try not to judge it. That's what I'm learning to do, not to judge it. Because I don't know what's going on with that person, or I don't know what that situation is truly about. So I turn a blind eye to it and just leave it in the hands of the powers that be. Like I call trust the process. Okay? If it's not interfering with my space and my well-being, that's how I learn to look at things. And I feel like that's a mature way of seeing things as I am starting to see myself. I can easily nowadays, if people didn't know my journey, could be looked at as a self-centered person, because I do speak highly of myself and I see the aspects, the quality aspects of me now, okay? And in my conversations, in my day-to-day activity, I'm focused on me. The point of this ending is just for us to try to mature and learn to tolerate if it doesn't interfere with your own growth and development. I want to emphasize that. But just tolerate. Look the other way sometimes.